Hi everyone, welcome to eLearnChat, where you always learn something new. I am joined today by my good friend from Scotland who lives close to London, Leslie Price with learnappeal.com. How are you doing today, Leslie?
Oh, I'm doing great, and I'm delighted that we've got the guest we have on today because it's an organization. The e-learning network is an organization I really believe in, are very big supporters of Learn Appeal, and I just thought it would be super to spread the word about the e-learning network.
Now, this is great. Now, today our guest is Joan Keevill, and she will be on in a moment. Here we go. And we are back, and joining us in that what we call our center position of power. It is Joan Keevill with the e-learning network. How are you today, Joan?
I'm very well, thank you, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. I know you and Leslie are old friends. You've known each other for a while, and she told me she's also always talked about Learn Appeal and how you've been good supporters of it. And what got you involved with the e-learning network?
I'd known about it for a long time, and I'd been a member and then allowed it to lapse. And then more recently, I guess I run my own business, and I went through a quiet time. And, I thought maybe it's time I gave something back to the community that's given me such an enjoyable career. And so I stood for election as a director, and I got nominated onto the board in November 2016. And then last November, I took on the role of chair of the board, and it's a blast. I really enjoy it.
Very nice. And pre-show, Leslie was telling us that you're Scottish too. So we've got two Scots on the show today. That's a good coincidence. We really haven't had two Scots, I think, before. So it's fun. What makes the e-learning network different from, let's say, other groups out there? And I've heard nothing but good about the network. So I know a little bit about it. I just don't know a lot about it. What makes it different? What makes it so attractive?
Well, I think I can give you two perspectives. I think one thing is for the board of directors, it gives us a chance, as I said, to give something back to the community because it's actually a community interest company, which is a bit like a charity.
Mm-hmm.
We're not for profit. So we all give our time up for free to promote the network and to give things back to people by organising events and things. And then for the members themselves, it's just about helping, I think, to build people's competence and give them opportunities to develop and understand much more about the industry. So it's about bringing those two things together. And I've had various conversations, especially this year after Learning Technologies, where I've been approached by two different individuals from German-speaking countries, well, mainly from Germany. And they're actually saying, I think we need a network like this in the German-speaking countries. Would you consider expanding? And one group actually said there's no way they could do this as a volunteer thing. The other group were more up for doing it as volunteers, but I think it gives it a whole different flavour. And what we're able to do when we run events for people, we somehow manage to bring competitors into the same room in a non-competitive way.
Mm-hmm.
Because the onus is to share knowledge and good practice. And I think that's a key thing for, so many times people turn up for a conference and they just get one sales pitch after another.
Right.
And they get a bit fed up with that, to be honest. Well, that's not what we're about.
Yeah, no, that's good. Because a lot of times you're right, the groups that are not run by independents or by people who are volunteering time tend to get co-opted. And then at that point, like you said, it's one big marketing sale job, and I think it loses a lot of what could have been a good situation. We've seen that happen with certain shows and with other things and other groups. So it's nice to see that you took that approach and it works well. So actually, we're benefiting from the fact you had a slow time in your business, and we know how that goes. And so by that happening, you benefited so many other people. So isn't it funny how that works out?
It is
The other
payback as
thing,
well, though.
Rick,
Yes.
I was
Sorry.
just going to say the other thing, Rick, is that Rick, you obviously met Wesley
Yes.
Atkinson. Wes has also just been elected to the board of
Ah.
the eLearning network. So it's and what's nice is that it's people who are on both sides of the fence that are on the board. So yes, Wes is vendor, Joan is essentially freelance, and then you get people on it as well who work for organizations, who are employees and work for organizations. So it's a real mixture. I say when I was at an event, I was there at an event in London on Tuesday, and again, it was a real mixture of people and, all chatting and talking to each other, and it didn't matter which side of the fence you were on.
Right.
Everybody was sharing.
Yeah, and that's a nice thing. Now, Joan, when you got into it, what was your background? Were you involved in education, corporate education, or academia? How did you get into the field?
Well, I've kind of been in the field all my career because I started out as a secondary teacher, French teacher in schools. And from there, I went into a role in the BBC in the languages department where we were developing materials for learners. And I then transferred into the corporate training department in the BBC where we were creating learning resources for staff, like production training, leadership training, health and safety, that kind of thing. And I was in the BBC for nearly 20 years, actually. And then I set up my own business. And from that point on, that was 2008. And from that point on, I've been doing, as Leslie says, it's a limited company, but I operate more as a freelance. And I do the kind of instructional design part of things and e-learning consultancy. So, what is the business need? What solution are you looking for? How can we improve what people are doing to make them perform better, as opposed to just tick a box that they've done some compliance e-learning or something. But, so understanding learning design and then different ways of creating and designing solutions is really what drives me. And as I say, it's something I've done for, almost forever. And also some of that is classroom sessions. So one of my clients, because I I work for different sorts of clients, and I have done quite a lot of things like classroom-based workshops on corruption, which has taken me to the States and China and India and Brazil and different places. So, and I think that, that ability to just stand up and speak in front of people and run a discussion session, have a plenary and get feedback, that just stays with you when you're in the role that I'm in now. So, on Tuesday, I was the one who kick-started the workshop, which was run by one of the directors. And when we have our annual conference in November, again, I initiated a session where I take the lead and I get everybody networking. So I can tell you more about that later on.
That sounds great. Now, in your travels, because I didn't know you've done that much traveling, what have you noticed different, the same, totally out of this world from different places you've been as far as education?
Different things, like in Japan, people tend to be quite passive. In a classroom environment, they're waiting to be taught. In South Korea, where I was, it was about trying to make yourself overheard because there was a lot of chat going on all the time. And in the end, what I did was at the very beginning of each workshop, I just was very explicit about what we were trying to achieve and how we were going to approach it, so that the methodology was clear. And basically that methodology was, I'm going to present you with some facts about, anti-bribery laws. But then we're going to look at case studies, and I want you guys to be able to discuss this with yourselves and then talk about what you think is right or wrong or acceptable. And it's that kind of giving people permission to ask questions and put forward their point of view on the basis that everybody's viewpoint is different. Everybody brings a set of assumptions with them to whatever they're learning. And particularly in an area like compliance, what I'm trying to do is to tease out what those assumptions are and how closely aligned they are with with the law or with what the organisation expects people to do in the terms of their behaviour. So it usually makes for very interesting discussions. And it's
I can
engaging.
imagine. What country did you like a lot in your
Sorry?
travels?
What country?
Yeah, what country did you enjoy?
I love the States. I mean, I go back.
Really?
I go there for holidays as often as I can. Brazil, I wasn't there very long. I was only in Sao Paulo. It was not maybe the best place to visit, but
Very
I'm hoping to
hectic,
go back.
right? Yeah.
Very, yeah. But
And
India's
you have to watch your pockets too.
yeah. I find India to be completely frantic.
Mm.
There's always car horns going off. A 4-lane highway actually has 6 or 7 lanes all at the same time, and they're not always going in the same direction. You know, there's things like that. But yeah. Again,
bit like learning in organisations, then, Jodie.
But for me, it's about what assumptions are you making. You know, I could go in and just lecture people and say, this is what we do in the UK or the US, and this is what we want you to do. But actually, I don't think that's very valuable. It's much more interesting to present people with a framework and understand their point of view in living a certain set of behaviours and values. Because then what you can do is you can identify the gap between what they think is okay and what you know is okay. And you can hopefully bring them towards where you need them to be. And I don't think you do that by just giving people lots of information and telling them stuff.
No, that's true.
That actually links nicely. That links nicely to the mentoring program that the eLN offer.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, Rick, but as a member of eLN, you can either volunteer to be a mentor or you can be a mentee. And I think that's another fantastic offering from the eLN. And I don't actually know of any other organisations like yourself that do that, Joan.
No, I mean, maybe I should take a step back and summarise the benefits, because what we offer people is different. You know, for core membership, we ask people to pay a fee of £29 for the whole year. And for that, they can attend for free any of our regional workshops, some of which are in London, which last a day. And in addition to that, they can have up to 5 hours of mentoring time across a membership period. They also will get a discount on the annual conference fee ticket. But again, even the conference, if you compare it to a big conference like Learning Technologies, which is over £1,000 for 2 days, our conference, at the moment, we're selling early bird tickets for £80 for members. So it's a very reasonable cost for the whole day. And the reason we can afford to run it like that is because we're asking our partners and associates and industry partners to help us to fund it by taking out sponsorship packages. So they will take out a sponsorship package for the event, and there's gold, silver and bronze, which will enable them to participate as a speaker, as a debate panelist, or just to have a table where they can display what they do. And then other people who come along and speak, we're not paying people for that. We're asking them to give up their time. We will cover expenses, and then we'll have our conference input through the tickets, the income from the tickets. But essentially, the model is that we'll generate a chunk of money through the annual conference. For each time we run a one-day event, like we did on Tuesday in London on learning design, we will look for a couple of sponsors. So one company, Aviva, on Tuesday gave us their fantastic venue and didn't charge us. And it's very central in London. Another company, Sponge, which is a big e-learning company, a very fast-growing one, they covered the cost of all the catering and drinks. So, and we didn't pay the speakers. So it kind of, I know it's not just goodwill, but a lot of it is goodwill because people are volunteering. That model is that we can do a lot of different things without costing a lot of money. Therefore, we can keep the membership fee down to £29. Now, in addition to face-to-face events, we've got regular monthly webinars, and they're open to members and non-members, and we have an archive on YouTube of those. And again, we invite people to run a webinar for us, to talk about interesting areas you'll see on the screen now. We recently had one about using video to transform workplace culture. We have other ones about using stories to create immersive learning.
That's very nice.
So we was talking
I
about
like the
chat.
idea of the mentor and mentee, and one could be a mentor and a mentee at the same time with different things. But that sounds actually really good. What kind of feedback do you get on that?
Oh, very good. I mean, I'm mentoring 3 people at the moment myself. One of them, I gave him his 5 one-hour sessions. Then he renewed his membership and came straight back for more.
Oh, nice.
So,
Yeah.
interestingly, by reflecting with him and enabling him to reflect on what he's doing, what he wanted to do, how he wanted to develop, he recently changed jobs. So I'm just waiting to pick up with him again to see how he's getting on in the new role. But I think another lady I've started to mentor recently has gone freelance just in the last few months. And she focuses on virtual reality, and she's done a lot of development when she worked for Pearson's previously. But interestingly, when we got talking, it wasn't so much about me helping her with, if you like, her content, VR. I know a bit about VR, but I don't know a huge amount. She knows more than me. But what she was actually worried about was running her business and running her life and getting the work-life balance right. And in the past, I've also done strategic stress management training, so I've been able to help her in that line. In addition to just talking about how to run your own business successfully, how to manage your time and things like that.
Now, Joan, you're not saying that it's stressful running a business, are you? No.
We've got a comment from the audience from Jean Burke Bradley, who says, "Well done, Joan."
Oh, I know Jean. Hi, Jean. Jean and I worked in a school together in the south of England, in East Sussex, a long time ago.
That's great. I was kidding about the stress management, but it's something people, when they get into business, don't realize, that you have to be able to handle stress, because there's not a day that doesn't have a little bit of stress in it somehow. And most people just kind of, you ignore it. Like you, I've been in business almost 35 years. So not only marriage, but business 35 years. And I think you need a certain personality to just let it continue, let it slide off, or you go insane. And that's kind of work that most people aren't told. And nobody's really helping somebody say, if you're going to get into this, be prepared for certain things that may surprise you. And so that's a good value added that you're giving to her, as far as
and it's not, and as Joan was saying, it's not just the e-learning network doesn't just focus on e-learning design.
Right.
It's all the different kind of roles that there are within the e-learning industry, the e-learning community. So yes, you'll meet people who are doing instructional design, but I'm a member and I haven't done any instructional design. I haven't actually created a course since 1998. So it also helps you with strategy, implementation. When you're in an organization, how do you go about getting buy-in from IT? How do you get buy-in from senior management? Right. So it's not just, so although it's called the ELN, the e-learning network, it's not just instructional design. And I just wanted to make that clear, Joan, just in case people think, oh, I'm not an instructional designer, this is not for me. It's much broader.
I could argue that's my personal bias, but you're absolutely right. And one of the things that I picked up at the conference in February, Rick, was I was just amazed at the number of people coming along to our exhibition stand and saying, oh, we've just started our digital transformation journey. We're not sure what to do first. In the BBC, we launched an e-learning platform in 2000. So my initial reaction is, where have you been all these years? Right. And then I have to feel. But it's that sense that there's people learning and beginning to use more and more technology to support learning, and it's an ongoing thing. And one of the things that Leslie and I are both thinking of and concerned about is are we doing enough as an industry to help that talent pipeline to develop? And I think, Leslie's been fantastic at pushing for more apprenticeships, because our government is funding colleges and universities and things to help them put together and pay for apprenticeships in digital learning design. But as such, at the moment, there are hardly any providers that are offering those programs. And I wonder whether in a few years' time, or even sooner than that, whether we're going to have a talent shortage. People are coming on board, coming into the industry, learning to be, producers, developers, whatever. And a lot of the time they have to pick it up as they go along. And sometimes a good academic course will really kickstart your career.
Well, it's interesting. We definitely have probably talent shortages now. I think probably worldwide. Common sense is definitely a shortage that we're all seeing worldwide everywhere. And it's something that does affect every one of us. And it affects the businesses. It affects all companies. It affects governments. And so, yes, I think what England's doing, or what the government is doing as far as trying to fund those kind of apprenticeships, are a good thing. We've got programs like that here, but they're not widely disseminated. They're not widely talked about. So you have to know about them before you can even find out that they exist, because nobody's going to tell, oh, by the way, we have a program to help you learn how to run your business or how to be a designer. And then if you do some digging, you find, hey, we have these programs, but very few people know about them, and which is a disservice to the communities that they serve. But that's kind of the way it is sometimes. They'll create it, but they don't disseminate it. And so it's good that organizations like yours are putting that out and trying to work with the agencies and everything else to make those things happen. So that's a very good thing, and hopefully that works.
Yeah, I think that's where a network, your personal network, is really important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how I don't know how you attract new business into your company, but all of the work I do tends to be word of mouth.
Yes.
And a personal network where you kind of can get your finger on the pulse. Who are the movers and shakers that you should be following? Who are writing blogs or increasingly doing podcasts and things. What are the current trends? What new books have come out that I actually should know, because they're like a Bible for the industry. And I think, things are changing fast. They always have done, I think, but they seem to be accelerating. And therefore, you need to keep your knowledge up to speed and learn new skills all the time. And if we work in L&D, I feel we ought to walk the talk. We ought to be good learners ourselves, and not think we just settle into a niche and not grow and develop. So I use my network a lot, and I don't just use it for my own benefit, clearly, because I'm working for the ELN, but it's also for me about connecting other people up. So off the back of Tuesday, Leslie, I've put one of my network, he's come in touch with me about something else, and I've put him in touch with the lady from Sponge, who was at the workshop on Tuesday, so that they can talk about any potential that they might work together. So, a network is, you and me this way, but it is also going out horizontally and bringing people together. And I think that, again, whether you're doing it virtually through the social media platforms, or whether you're doing it face to face, if you can, or even through things like this, where it's like, or live webinars or whatever. There's just so much opportunity now to make the world smaller and keep, as I say, keep your finger on what's happening and what to look out for.
As you know, I'm always doing that. I'm always I look how many people I'm trying to introduce you to. I'm the same. Rick, when Rick and his wife Leslie were on the Learn Appeal stand, eventually we went to a couple of do's at the pub. I think Rick and Leslie said, is there anybody you don't know, Leslie? But that's because I'm like you, Joan. I've been in the industry a long time. And one of the things that people value is, if they do want to know somebody who's doing something, I'll ask Joan or I'll ask Leslie, because they'll put me in touch. And I think what's also important when you're doing the networking is you put the people in touch, but then you take a step back and you let them go on with making their network. You don't keep sticking your nose in all the time. You know, you say, I hope it's going well, but you actually let them. And another thing people don't realize is that networking and keeping in touch with your network is actually hard work. It takes time and it takes effort.
Yeah. But it is worth it.
It is worth it.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting because when we went to London, one of the first people we met was Eric Kimori, who is from Kenya, and he's part of the Learn Appeal project. And he and I become friends. We talk to each other all the time on Facebook, and it's just kind of fun how quickly friendships and business relationships can be made from just simple hi, how are you, and let me introduce you to somebody. And Leslie, as you know, and I'm sure you're the same way, Joan, you know everybody. So like everybody thinks I'm very gregarious. I'm actually not. I'm a little quiet and tend to be not the best networker around. But get me with a group, I'm usually pretty good. I can talk to people. Leslie knows everybody and their mothers. So you can just find out. In 15 minutes of standing with Leslie in the stand, you met 20 people. And so that's interesting. It's always fun.
Joan is exactly the same. I think part of it, I mean, this is going to sound a bit weird, but part of it is possibly our Scottish background. That is very, very much part of the Scottish culture. I think you would agree, Joan. A lot of it is when I first moved to England, I couldn't understand why you could be in an underground and people wouldn't talk to you, or you'd go into the station or you'd go into a shop and people didn't talk to you, because that's not the way things work, particularly if you're from the west coast of Scotland.
Right.
Everybody talks to you, probably too much.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. But you know what happens also, the bigger the city, the more people wind up becoming less friendly in public places because they don't know. What do they tell you? First thing, don't talk to strangers. So nobody talks to anybody. I grew up in New York City.
I can assure you it doesn't apply in Glasgow, Rick.
Yep.
If you'd been in Glasgow and you'd asked somebody for directions, if they were going that way, they would actually physically take you. Yep. Is that not right, Joan?
It would, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Well, I was born in Argentina, and Buenos Aires, the same way. It's a big city, very busy, but you still have, I don't know about now. Now they're having a unique crime issue, but it's a very friendly city for the most part. And I've been there. I knew the city very well, so people have asked me, do you know how to get there? Sure, I'll show you. And I would take them. Or they would take me if I didn't know where I was going. And that's fun because you get to even meet people, know people that way. But it is interesting. Not all cities are like that. When we went to visit you, Leslie, we were in the underground plus the train. Nobody really talked to anybody. People were very quiet. I was just looking around, and everybody was like facing forward. There was not much conversation. Train was the same. Everybody sat down, looking out the window or straight ahead. Nobody talked. So we kept kind of quiet, just watching people. But and you're right. You go to other places and people are very chatty, very friendly, and it just depends. Depends where you're at. Los Angeles, everybody thinks is very friendly. It's a kind of cold city, actually, and that's where we're at now. We're close to Los Angeles. Not the friendliest, even though people individually are friendly. As a group, the people tend to just be, or they're in their cars all the time too. They never get out of the car. So, public transportation, no, the people aren't very chatty. People just sit and stare. So it's interesting.
Well, I can assure you eLearning network events are not like that.
No, I can imagine. That's true. Well, when we were at the pub for the learning technologies thing, Leslie kept saying, Rick, here's somebody. Oh, Rick, this one. And I was turning back and forth, and I had no idea who I was meeting, but people were fun. I met Richard Price there, who just sent me a note on LinkedIn. I have to respond to him because he wants to come on the show and talk and stuff. But it's interesting. It was so quick. There was so many people so fast. I was going, wow, Leslie does know everybody.
You met Marco Ficini and you met Steve Wheeler. And we've had both of them on the show. But as I say, Joan was very involved because the ELN also have a stand at the event. Mm-hmm. And then Joan was also doing tweeting. to help out the organisers. So
Yeah.
it was just too busy.
Yeah, but it was
Well, the
fun.
thing about tweeting and using social media at an event, whether it's one of ours or a bigger one like Learning Technologies, it does then allow people to kind of feel part of the event, even if they can't attend in person.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm on the Twitter team for Learning Tech, there'll be a whole bunch of us, and we'll be assigned to different conference sessions, and we will tweet from that session using the same hashtag.
Mm-hmm.
And we sometimes end up we're at the top of the tweet list that day or whatever, because there's so much activity going on, and then lots of people retweeting. But I wonder if I can go back to something I said about networking earlier on, because in our annual conference, which is just a one-day event with lots of speakers, etc., at my instigation, really, I'm very conscious when I am a learning designer by trade. I'm very conscious that we talk about, for example, for e-learning, we say don't just have page turning, don't pump people full of information. They won't remember it all. It'll go in one ear out the other, blah, blah, blah. And then we attend a conference, and what do we get? We get one speaker after another who is effectively the sage on the stage talking at us. And often the audience is sitting at tables, but they're not actually being encouraged to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And my feeling is when we should not allow ourselves to just have people talking at delegates. And all it needs really is quite simple to me. You just need to have a moment where you allow people to take some time to reflect on what they've heard and discuss it on their tables or discuss it with somebody nearby. Because for me, that helps them to make sense of it.
Yeah.
And it also helps them to get to know each other and build their network. So when it came to looking at the design of our own annual conference, the ELN Connect conference, which is on in November this year in London, I said, why don't we have a dedicated networking session? And let's do it right before lunch, because then it's a natural thing that people will pair up with people that they like talking to, and they'll go and have lunch together. And so what we do around about 11:15, 11:30 or something is in each of the rooms, if we've split into 3 different rooms by now, in each of the room, one facilitator, which will be me and a couple of my colleagues, we will instruct everybody to do effectively speed dating around the room. And we'll put a time on it. So we'll say, right, you've got a minute to introduce yourself, give people the elevator pitch about you and what you do, and then stop and listen to what they are saying. And then after another minute, move on and go and talk to somebody else. And by God, they can get around that room and meet, 10, 15, 20 different people and just get a snapshot of what they do. And that then breaks the ice and allows them to then easily have conversations with other people at the event.
That's a good idea.
And it's been very powerful, actually, very powerful.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And with that, we are at the end of our show. Joan, we'd love to have you back on and continue talking about some of these things and what you do with the eLearning Network and your ideas. I love what you're doing with that, for example, that little icebreaker. That's important. That's simple things that make such a difference. So love to have you come back on and share some more with that. And maybe even after the show, tell us how the show went in November.
Will do. Yeah, very happy. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks very much, Joan. Thank you.
And there'll be information below on the eLearning Network as well as Joan if you want to get in touch with Joan or join the network. We'll have information in the show notes right below. So next week, we will see you again on eLearnChat. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks, Joan. Thanks, Leslie.
Thanks, Joan. Bye.
Bye. And it's a wrap.